Only now, modern neuroscience has shown that the effects of reading can be more extraordinary than they could ever have dreamt. New imaging technology like fMRI scanning allows us to observe the living brain at work. It's shown that reading, something most of us take for granted, can help unlock remarkable powers. Reading builds new connections in the brain, which in turn allow us to use written words as stepping stones to understand other people's worlds. A good book literally has the power to change you. And that's why, although most of us take it for granted, reading is so remarkable. Reading and writing don't come naturally, so to do it, the brain must change.
Human beings were never born to read. We were born to speak. We were born to see, smell, hear, but never read. What the human brain had to do was to rearrange its existing parts.
So how did the human brain that evolved to speak make the leap to literacy? How did our brains get from recognizing this to knowing what these abstract marks on a page sound like and understanding what they mean? Today, it's impossible to imagine a world without trillions of words on street signs and hoardings, in newspapers, books, magazines, and on the internet. We live in a world saturated with written language. So how did the brain get rewired to read?
To understand how we do new things, which we do constantly, you need to know two key things about the brain. One is that it's modular. That is, different bits of it specialise in doing different things. And the other is that it's plastic. The bits change. The modules work together to produce an almost infinite range of behaviour. You could think of it as a sort of Lego set that can be built up to do one thing and then dismantled and built again in a different way to do something else entirely. Same bits, different function.
So a lot of areas of the brain are involved, and they're all integrating together to transform visual information into auditory information, into motor information, and into the meaning. And of course, when you read a word, and you can do so in a few hundred milliseconds, you have no idea how hard your brain is working.
So there's no single reading centre, but a highly complex network, a cerebral internet. Cathy's work laid bare an intricate reading kit of parts. In tiny fractions of a second, the brain must decipher letters and connect them to sounds. Another part of the brain connects sounds and letters to meaning. Yet another stream of signals fires up parts of the brain that control the movement of our mouths and tongues, even when we're reading silently. If a single one of these connections is broken, as it is in Terry's brain, the system gets jammed. You may see letters but not a word, or read a word and not know what it means. And what is just as remarkable is that every part of our reading kit was originally designed to do something else.
There are no areas of the brain that only respond to reading. So all the areas that are reading are also involved in recognizing objects, in speaking. So in order to read, it's the connections between the visual inputs and the component sounds that need to be linked together. So this doesn't involve any new brain regions. What it involves is stronger and more efficient links.
Tom Palmer grew up in the next valley to Haworth. Just a few years ago, he would never have contemplated picking up a book.
I just didn't want to read books. I had other things to do.
But why? What did you think books were about? What was wrong with them?
There was nothing in them for me. There was nothing of interest. Why would I want to read a story? And why would I want to look in a book? Really, it was television, computer games, or playing football for me.
Desperate, Tom's mother gave him books about his consuming passion, football, to kick-start his reading habit. And the plan worked. Tom moved from soccer facts to the classics. For Tom, reading changed everything. He started writing himself, and today he's a prize-winning author of teenage fiction. Tom had discovered the single most powerful effect of reading, the way a book opens a door into other worlds and other minds.
There's a phrase in libraries, creative reading, and I think that reading is a creative act in itself, as writing is, because you are creating something while you're reading it. You're bringing in your own experiences. It's hard to put it into words, but it's something to do with when you can get into the minds of other characters and see what they're experiencing. It makes you better at empathising. I think that sounds a bit fanciful, but I think it did make me less of a selfish person. I don't usually talk about books in this way, but I do believe that fiction has helped me see things from other people's points of view.
Today, neuroscientists are intrigued by our ability to empathise, what Tom Palmer called getting into the minds of other characters.
Fiction involves imaginary worlds in the sense of imaginary characters, not necessarily based in anything factual. And the reader, whether it's a young child or an adult, has to enter into this imaginary world. So there are various steps of imagination. You have to put yourself in the mind of the author who's creating this imaginary world, but you may also have to put yourself in the minds of the characters in the text, treating them as real and trying to empathise with the characters. So when we think of reading as purely about literacy, there's obviously an extra dimension to it, which is empathy.
We too may not be aware of our neural circuits changing as we read. But they do, whenever we live out the drama of a story inside our heads and think thoughts and feel feelings that originated in another mind.